All right, well, let's go ahead and get started, everybody. Hello, my name is Jonathan Liebert. I am the CEO and co-founder of the Colorado Institute for Social Impact. Thank you for joining us today. And so we've got some folks here in the room, but we are also live streaming this event all over Colorado. And tonight's panel is we're going to talk about just funding for different social impact businesses and kind of these new models that are coming up as well. This is one of the things we get a lot of questions about at the Colorado Institute for Social Impact. And so we figured that doing this panel would just be helpful to kind of set really a solid foundation for people to understand what this is, what this isn't, and also what are some of the different types of funding that are out there for folks that want to start a social impact business. Before we meet our panel tonight, though, just a little bit about the Colorado Institute for Social Impact. This is the organization has been around for a couple of years now, and this is an organization, it's a social enterprise that is geared toward providing education and building awareness around this new sector of the economy. And what I mean by that is, if you look at this right here, we work with nonprofit organizations. We also work with for-profit organizations. But when we're talking about a social impact business or the fourth sector of the economy, you really have to think about it's these things kind of here in the middle. And so what we're seeing right now, what's happening in the economy is we're seeing these hybrid businesses. So we're seeing nonprofit organizations that are starting businesses and moving more to this middle. And so they might be a social enterprise or a social business. We're also seeing more for-profit companies that are incorporating more mission-based strategies into their business models and providing more value, more impact, and more information that is helpful to providing in solving social issues. And so they might be some type of legal entity or a conscious capitalist. And so the institute that we've started really tries to help provide more education, more awareness, more information, and just bring knowledge to different folks so they know what they can do. So if they want to start a new business or start a new nonprofit, or if they have an existing business or nonprofit and want to do more in this space, this is what the Institute is all about, is bringing people together, providing them information, giving them training. We do a lot of free training, free education. We can also measure impact. So we do something called social return on investment, where we can actually measure if a business, a nonprofit, or even just philanthropic giving, what is that true impact that your gift can give? Or what is that impact that that business can have on solving some type of social issue? So a lot of exciting things. You can check this out more at www.ci4si.org. It's ci4si.org for just a lot of good information and free classes. We do a lot of free training as well. That's part of our give back as a social enterprise of really making sure this information is free to a lot of people in the community so they can utilize this in their business or in their nonprofit. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So we've got up here a fantastic panel to talk to you today about just really what it is in terms of the new funding strategies, strategies that they have implemented, strategies that might be coming, and just to really kind of give us a solid foundation. And really, this is a 101 kind of thing. There's a lot of new things that are out there. And again, as I mentioned, we just get a lot of questions about this. And so we really want to make sure that we're answering some of those questions. And so we've assembled this phenomenal panel tonight to talk to you about some of the work that they are doing in the space already through their organizations. And so what we'll do right now is we're just going to go right down the list here. And the first question for all of them, again, it's just going to be just introductions. Who are you? What organization you're with? The history of that organization, and then some of the work that you do right now with any partners or clients. And so, again, we'll kind of keep this part to about 3 minutes a person. But Mr. Tutt, we'll go ahead and start with you. Take it away.
Jonathan, thank you very much. I'm Thayer Tutt. I'm Vice Chairman and Chief Investment Officer of El Pomar Foundation, and I've been with El Pomar for almost 37 years. El Pomar was started back in 1937 by Spencer and Julie Penrose. And Spencer Penrose passed away in 1939, and then after that, Julie passed away in 1956. And the foundation only makes grants in the state of Colorado. You want me to continue on with?
Please.
I actually have the only homework that you're going to be using today. In front of you, you'll see 3 slides. And Jonathan and I talked about it and thought that what I do is just go over the different kind of options that are available. And the most significant one you see is one called program-related investments. As it says, this type of impact investing allows private foundations to make a financial investment that serves as a charitable purpose. This was created by the 1969 Tax Reform Act. It's basically an investment in a nonprofit that's part of your payout, but it's not a investment expected to have a for-profit type of return. So moving on to the second page that you have. I'm going through this very quickly, right, boss?
Right.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
The benefits of the PRI are very straightforward. As you see, treated as a qualified distribution under Section 4942. I will tell you these slides have been created by Maureen Lawrence, Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Alpamar, so they're very technical, but Maureen, thank you very much. What that refers to is the IRS code, but the important thing is that these grants can be made to for-profit, nonprofit, and government organizations. In addition, the return cannot be a financial return. If you do make some money off of it, and we'll talk a little later about that's okay. But the key thing is they have to be for a charitable purpose. The last sheet that you have actually shows you the range of options that we'll be talking about tonight. On the left, you have our traditional grants. Those are what we do for a living in the foundation business. Grants to United Way, to University of Colorado Springs, to Colorado College, whoever it is. On the other end is the traditional investments. Those are the investments the foundations make in corporations, for example, Microsoft, Apple, Boeing, or whoever it is. Those are the investments that we hope to appreciate over time and lead to greater payouts to the community. And in between are the three types of grants that we'll be talking about today. First, as I mentioned, the program-related investments. The second is mission-related investments. MRIs are actually a type of investment that meets the philosophical goals of the foundation. It can be market rate of return, and I'll mention a few of those at our next question. But those are actually true investments. And the last one is sustainable investments, or SRI, socially responsible investments. And those are really negative screens. Those are the kind of things that you wouldn't want to invest in, perhaps fossil fuels, tobacco, or weapons, things like that. So that's your homework for the night, folks. You will not be tested on it. And now I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Thayer, and very helpful. And this, again, kind of helps set the stage for a lot of the conversation tonight. What you're going to hear now as we move forward is just some of the specific examples that these organizations have in terms of working with some of these funding strategies. But Mr. Mossman, turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thayer, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here this lovely evening. The weather finally changed for us. It was pretty cold and chilly this morning, so I was glad to see a nice afternoon. I was able to take a nice walk today. So anyway, my name's Ted Mossman. I work for TBK Bank. I've been in banking for approximately 26 years and been in the Springs for about 12 years. I've been involved with the CI for SI board since its inception. I started out with the BBB Foundation board and have been very active and involved with this evolution of what's happening with this organization. So I've enjoyed it thoroughly, glad to be part of it. And it's fun to see what's happening in this sector, in the economy, and all the interest that we see from our kids to people that are in their 20s and 30s, wanting to work for a place that has a social impact or a mission, finding different ways to kind of give back. It's just building. The momentum is getting ridiculous. And so it's exciting to be part of that evolution since being in banking, working with for-profits and not-for-profits as long as I have, this idea and this concept is it's just been a long time coming. So excited to be part of that. So I want to talk a little bit about TBK Bank and what we're trying to do to help social impact businesses. And with any type of traditional funding or lending source, we have to look at credit fundamentals, right? That's kind of how banks look at things because we have to be right like 98% of the time when we make an investment or lend money out to an organization because margins are so thin. If we take a loss on a loan, we have to have a lot of performing loans to kind of make up for that loss, right? So we have to make really good, solid credit decisions. And so I think the next step in terms of this evolution is we're going to see better quality business plans put together. I was just talking with Rachel about that from a consulting perspective. Being able to project out, the ability to repay debt that you would take on, to service, and to fund this organization that you might be contemplating to start up. So that's kind of where, working with a smaller, community bank or, a bank that is just a little bit more contemporary in their thinking may be helpful because they'll be able to get in and really look at the opportunity through kind of a different lens. And that's really what it's going to take in order for this to move forward and for a business to get the funding that they need. So with that, I mean, that's pretty much, what we're doing at our bank. And I think we're seeing other institutions kind of take that same approach just because the demand is there. And I don't see it slowing down at all. So we're going to have to find a way to serve this market as a community. One of the other things that we can do as an organization is better understand what our investment is into the communities we serve. A lot of banks will give to nonprofit organizations. They'll donate time. A lot of lenders and leaders will serve on boards in the communities. So I think the next step is to get a return on investment study done, social return on investment study done, so that we can kind of measure that and quantify that. And once we do that, shareholders will see that investment in the community, and it can also, kind of set a standard, going forward. So I'm hopeful that we'll see more of that happen, down the road. I think that's pretty much all I have. Becky, you want to take over for me?
Darn, you covered all the good stuff. No. I'm Becky Fuller, and I'm working on starting a certified development company, and it's a social impact business. It's a nonprofit that basically is, let me say it in English to you guys. I'm trying to get approval so that this nonprofit that I have can sell mortgage-backed securities. But the vision is we make money by originating and selling. We make a profit, we pay people fairly, and then that profit goes back into the nonprofit community to create more job creators. So it's an economic development program. It's super challenging, and I'm in probably the same place that a lot of you are as far as that fundraising piece of it. I know how to finance for-profit businesses, but when it comes to the nonprofit businesses, it's been a whole new world. So I guess the experience it will make me a better lender because I know the struggles and once you've had 500 people tell you no, the 500 first doesn't hurt so much. So I love business and I love entrepreneurs, and really my vision is I want to live in a community where the only reason you can't find funding for your business is because you don't merit funding. And it doesn't mean you'll never merit funding. It just means that, maybe you need a plan to improve your credit or get there. And so I think my superpower is that I speak bank. Like, I understand how the bank thinks. I know what kind of words you need to use. I used to be a credit underwriter, so I know what projections should look like. I know how to do some research on that. So really, I spend a lot of time volunteering in the community with the Small Business Development Center because I really want you to have access to capital and not miss out because your brother doesn't work at the bank or you didn't know how to fill out the loan application, because most of it's pretty straightforward. It's the same kind of thing that you would be asking me if you were going to lend me money. How are you going to pay me back? Have you paid the other people back? So that's what I like to do. And I'll see where it goes. And I look forward to, hopefully I hit what you wanted to know. There you go. Oh, I've lived here 20 years.
Thanks, Becky. Mr. Holliday.
Thank you. Thayer, thank you so much for laying out the PRI. That was very helpful. I am Bart Holliday. I'm chairman and CEO of the Dakota Foundation. The Dakota Foundation was started in 1997 by my wife and I. And I'll go back even further. In the late 80s and early 90s, I became enamored of the idea that business was a powerful tool to accomplish social change, that businesses survived and they grew and they could have enormous impact. And if there were a way of combining charitable intent with business discipline, that would be a real powerhouse. So we set up an organization in the early 90s called Investors Circle, which still exists today. And I was on the board and chairman of that for a while. But the idea there was to invest in small startup companies that had double or triple bottom line results, financial return, an environmental return, and a social return. But today what I'll do is talk about the Dakota Foundation, which is our family foundation. Our mission is to change lives by assisting people to achieve greater self-sufficiency for themselves and their families by providing them with tools that help them help themselves. And this, my wife and I founded this out of a certain frustration working with nonprofits in Chicago where, and I don't want to sound critical, but a number of them had what I would call good-hearted inefficiency. Their hearts were in the right place, but they were not delivering the kind of service and customer focus that I was used to in business. So again, the idea was, could we somehow bring the discipline of business to the nonprofit sector? We began early on by using program-related investments, and we've done probably 25 or 26 of them by now. And I would only add one more thing to what Thayer said about program-related investments. We typically do 7-year low-interest loans to nonprofits that can generate cash flow. And when those loans are repaid, they have to be recycled within the year. So each year as a private foundation, in grants and PRIs, we put out at least 5% of our corpus. When we get money back, we have to add that to the 5% that we put out each year. So PRIs, we found, are a very effective way of kind of leveraging the charitable impact that we can have. We've done several PRIs with a local organization, Blue Star Recyclers, who some of you may be familiar with. They recycle electronic waste using a workforce that's composed primarily of individuals with autism. And since about 80% of people with autism get some form of public support, this takes people who are on public support, makes them tax-paying, wage-earning employees working with people who have the same condition they do, doing something that they're really good at, which is repetitive tasks, and taking stuff that would in large part go to a landfill and recycling it. So they're very substantial social returns from this one. They are about 95 to 97% self-sufficient from their fees that they get from their recycling services. So to us, it's a wonderful investment for us. We've also funded for-profit benefits that are subsidiaries of nonprofit organizations. We've done one in Denver called Art Restart, which sells the art and products created by homeless women at the Gathering Place in Denver. And not only does the work provide therapy for the women, but it provides income to them since they get 5 to 10% of their proceeds. It also gets money back to the Gathering Place to support their mission. Another one we've done is called Simply Good Cakery, which is with Extended Hands of Hope, a nonprofit that works with young women caught in sex trade operations. And here it teaches the young women baking skills, distribution skills, sales skills, and again provides a cash flow back to the organization to support the mission. Another device that we've used that I like a lot is what are called social impact bonds or pay for success. I'm not sure how many of you may be familiar with them. But it's a little complicated, but it involves a partnership between a nonprofit who puts up money to take a risk that a solution to a social problem will work, a for-profit entity that has the solution, and a government entity that says, if this works, we'll pay you back for the risk that you took to do this. A typical example has been reducing the recidivism rate at prisons, for example. So the nonprofit will put up $10 million. The county will say, if you get the recidivism from 60% down to 30%, we'll pay you back the $10 million and see what happens when you do the program. And I really like that because it's using nonprofit dollars to take a risk on a possible social solution that if it works, the government then takes the responsibility for the program going forward because it saves them money. We also sponsor an entrepreneurship social enterprise prize each year for the best social enterprise business plan, and then we provide funding for that venture. So I think that's a summary of what we do, and I could talk a lot more, but I'll stop here.
You guys keep busy.
Yeah, it's a
But-
lot of fun.
No, thank you. And hopefully what you've heard already with this group is that this is a very innovative space. And again, everybody is trying to achieve, from a funding perspective, more innovation around getting money to those social entrepreneurs to figure out how to fund their business. And when I say business, that can mean a 501c3 not-for-profit, or an LLC, C corporation, et cetera. And so this is what we're seeing just more and more in the space, is that there are very traditional models of funding that exist and have existed for a long time. But as business changes, as nonprofits are evolving, you need a different way and a different form of funding to be able to get that money to those organizations to help create more impact for their mission. And so, what we're seeing right now in the marketplace is really this a merge between mission and margin, a purpose and profit. And so any type of purpose-driven organization is going to, need access to capital. And so up here, you've seen a really diverse group of individuals who are doing really good work, that do work specifically with just for-profits or just with nonprofits. You're going to see more change as we kind of keep going through this. And what we're seeing right now throughout the United States is more businesses that are really kind of rising to this occasion. Had a conversation with an organization just the other day, and their CEO had recently traveled to Davos, Switzerland, for the World Economic Forum. And what was interesting, one of their takeaways was the CEO had gone for many, many years, came back, and the staff kind of asked them, what did you kind of learn? What's kind of the pulse of what's going on right now economically for the world? And the comment was, they had many takeaways, but the one most prominent takeaway was, every single business I spoke to, every single conversation I was in, it was all talking about sustainability. And that's really different, because before it was a choice. Now we have to do this. We've got to figure out a way to do it. And a lot of companies are doing this already, but they may not be communicating it well. Or they are communicating it, but they're not communicating it to the right people and measuring it. So we are seeing the shift that's going on right now, again, within for-profits and nonprofits. And so this is a phenomenal panel that does a lot of this work. And so thank you guys for being here. Okay, so the next question, which is for Ted and for Becky. Hold the mic. Hold the mic. So Ted and Becky, why do you think that businesses should have a social impact component built into their business model?
I think that's an excellent question, and I've been pondering that question for about a week, and I have a lot of different thoughts on the subject. But one mainly is, being a community leader, being involved with different nonprofit organizations for many, many years, and that have a mission and are serving the community in some way, and being in a leadership role, like a chair, for example, and having that responsibility of raising money is always a challenge, right? So these not-for-profits struggle every single year, to meet their budget. And they can have the best mission in the world, but if they can't raise the money to keep the sustainability in place, which is kind of what we're talking about here, it's an issue. So I believe that you can take a not-for-profit, turn it into a social impact business, and find a way to create your own funding source, right? And that will open up many opportunities for you if you're able to do that, in terms of being able to expand, but also fulfill your mission and not be beholden to trying to raise money through your board or through different fundraising events. It's difficult. It's hard to raise money, even if you have a mission that is super important and critical to the community in which you live and serve in. So to me, that's one example, one reason. The other reason, I think, is just the evolution of our youth today in terms of wanting to work for an organization and align themselves with an organization that has a mission that they're passionate about. And I believe that they'll take maybe slightly less money to work for that organization. I believe that their productivity will be better than it would for an organization that they were just going to work for a paycheck. So those are a couple of other reasons too. And the other last reason I believe is that the funding sources have dried up for a lot of these, social missions that are out there, serving the homeless or serving, some other aspect of a need that's in the community. And because the funding's kind of dried up and the government isn't helping out much in that regard and hasn't really for a long time, the need is still there, right? So how do we find a way as a community and as a society to serve that need? And I'll just say homeless, is a good example. I mean, it's a big challenge we have. So how do we continue to serve that population and help them, find a way to get back into society and, have a positive impact for themselves and building their confidence, but also be a contributing member, to our society as well. So, and the government doesn't have programs out there for that. And the programs they have are minimal and they just don't have the funding. So to me, that's another reason that you'd want to, create some sort of social impact type business. And I love Blue Star Recyclers. That is such a cool company, taking a group of people and finding a way to give them purpose and be a contributing member in our society and, pay them and take something that they can do well and help them, kind of fulfill that. So those are, I probably talked too much, but those are some of my
you're fine.
thoughts on it. I've really thought about this a lot this past week, and those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Is there any time left?
Sorry.
Yes.
Grab it there. Take it. I think that the social impact piece is important because we all live here and we all want to live in a better community. I think a big chunk of that too is it has to be, you have to have a passion for it. Otherwise it just feels fake. So when you're looking at, like, I spend time, I'm the board treasurer for Junior Achievement. I think economic opportunity for everyone is really important, and they have to start thinking about it young. Like understanding, like I hammer third grade kids on keeping track of their bank accounts and having good credit because it affects everything else in your life. So I think business owners in general kind of get painted as these cold, hard capitalists, and they only care about themselves. And that's not true. I mean, they're your neighbors. They go to church with you. They're your friends. They're not all cold. But just as capitalism serves a need, social impact businesses also fill a need. And I think finding that intersection, there doesn't have to be a disconnect between the two. I think they can work together. And that's why I'm pursuing what I'm pursuing, because I want to create a sustainable funding story, like a perpetual funding stream for every economic opportunity I can do. And I love the Small Business Development Center, but it kills me that every year they're out there begging for money. And it's because they don't have that perpetual funding stream. And it's the same with CI4SI. It's like, it's all job creation. It's how do you this is like some crazy skill that I have that probably 4 people in Southern Colorado have. So I'm going to see if I can make it happen. And it's hard, but I do believe in it enough, and I keep getting offered jobs by banks, and it's like, yeah, but this is bigger because it's bigger than me. It's like, I'm not going to lay on my deathbed and say, wish I'd made another 50 grand. I'm going to say, I wish I'd made this a better community so my kids will stay here. Because I like this place, and I'm glad I live here. So.
That's great.
Thank you very much. All right, so.
Could I add one? I know it isn't my
Yes.
question, but
But you have some good thoughts, I
but I
imagine.
have one thought.
All right.
I mean, I think the primary reason businesses should have a strong social consciousness is for self-preservation. The millennials in particular are using their investment dollars and their consumption dollars to buy products and invest in companies that have a social consciousness. So if you want to succeed, you need it.
Yes.
if even if you really don't have any social consciousness at all, it makes business sense.
It makes good business. Well, and to add to that, here's some of the statistics on that, and this is coming from Cone Communications. So right now, if you were to survey the millennials, the research tells us that 75% of millennials believe that a company should do more than just make money. They should serve some type of social cause. 75% of millennials. New research has shown up now within the last month, same people doing the survey, for Gen Z, the next generation. 90% of the next generation believes that a company should do more than just make money. They should also have a higher purpose and give back to society, give back to their employees, invest in their communities, have an ethical supply chain, and be environmentally good stewards. 5 things. So it is changing, and I think you guys are right. You're hitting on something where really what we believe we're seeing is just watching kind of capitalism evolve into this next kind of phase of this, which is it's purpose and profit. Got to make money, but what else are you doing? How else are you creating impact? And there, I don't know if you had a comment as well.
What I wanted to add is the El Pomar Foundation has 2 guiding principles. One is honor the legacy of Spencer and Julie Penrose, but more importantly, or equally as importantly, is to just improve the quality of life for the people of the state of Colorado. Traditionally, we've done that through grants, just grant making by mail, waiting for the nonprofits to come to us and funding their project. But as we've heard today, we've tried to expand and be more creative, more innovative. And so just 3 examples. One, in the mission-related investment category, back in 2011, Discover Goodwill came to El Pomar Foundation looking for $2 million out of $6 million to buy a building on Garden of the Gods Road for their new headquarters. And I analyzed their financials and realized they're in really good financial shape. So rather than give them $2 million, I said, what if we buy the building and rent it back to you as a market at a market rate of return? At that time was 6%. Wish I could get 6% with a good credit like that every day, right? From the bankers. So we actually bought the building and rented it to them, and they remodeled it. And then in 2015, 16, and 17, we donated the building to them at an appreciated value. 2011 was a good time to buy real estate. So that worked out really well for us, as well as Discover Goodwill. A second one is a program-related investment. First one we've ever done. Dakota's done many of them. But for El Pomar, it was one called Tech Ventures LLC. It's a business incubator in Colorado Springs, started in 2018. And what we did is we invested $125,000 in 6 startups. But it wasn't just about the startups and the potential for profit, even though one of them, Bar Now, has over $330,000 in sales. So it's actually doing very well. But more importantly, it was to create an incubator, a job creation environment in the Pikes Peak region. And so they've now spun off a nonprofit called the Exponential Impact, and we made a 3-year grant of $45,000 where they're going out and training people on how to become entrepreneurs and working with local colleges and universities. And the last one is the Colorado Springs Rescue Mission. They came to us back in 2014 wanting actually $1 million for their general programming. Our trustees weren't that interested in just warehousing people. And so they have a very successful catering operation. So what we did is we gave them $1 million, and we actually paid it starting in 2019 and this year to build a new commercial kitchen. And they will then hire and train many of the folks in the homeless services who want to get out of it. And then they will have their first job at First Presbyterian Church, who is the partner with the Rescue Mission. So here again, El Pomar is trying to address a problem, not be the expert, but fund the experts, but be more proactive and creative than we have done in the past.
Thank you, sir. I love the innovation. And that, if you just kind of saw how it was, here's the nonprofit, here's the for-profit, here's the entrepreneurship, the social entrepreneurship, all in under 2 minutes. I mean, but a perfect example. But I mean, this is what we wanted to kind of bring to folks, is just kind of give you an example of what's going on here in our community. And, you know, obviously this is happening all over the United States. And this is a perfect segue into the question for you, Thayer, and for you, Bart, as well, in terms of looking at just the nonprofit model. Why do the two of you believe, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit, Bart, already, but why do the two of you believe that it's important for a nonprofit to really utilize a for-profit kind of mentality and structure? Why is it important to kind of use some of the good things that businesses do to make sure that they're sustainable?
You want to start, Bart?
Do I get to go first?
Yeah.
I want to say, Thayer, the deal with Discover Goodwill was absolutely brilliant. I mean, talk about a win-win. It was terrific, and it did so much for them. And
Well, actually, we had a new one. We did a new one last year, the Space Foundation. We bought their building, their addition, and the price wasn't as good as 2011. but they're renting the building from us at about a 5.25%. It's not as good as 6. But once again, we hope that when they build their much larger, more successful Discovery Center with our help, that it turns out and adds to the economic development in our community. And so we hope it works just as well as Discover Goodwill. And they're a pretty good credit, too.
Right.
we'll try to answer the question. I believe that the same fundamental good management principle that you. No, that's right. That's okay. I'm used to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you must be married.
How did you know? Yeah. I believe that the same effective management practices and strategic planning that work in the for-profit sector should work equally well in the nonprofit sector. And it's hard not to sound critical, but I've gone to a number of conferences where there are a lot of small family foundations like ours. And the sad thing to me about them is that a majority seem to sort of do a lot for the communities they're in, but in very small, unfocused ways. They give $10,000 to everyone who comes in without ever thinking about how can I maximize the impact I have of the limited dollars that I have, and what can I do that's most important to the community. So I think strategic planning is terribly important for a nonprofit. But the reason to create a sustainable business model is, as we've talked about earlier, relying every year on donations is a losing game. And to the extent that you can create any form of predictable cash flow coming into the nonprofit, that helps a great deal. It also allows donors to feel that their donations are being leveraged because there's more money coming in and their donations have a bigger effect. Finally, as Bob and I have talked about with veterans, there are 1.5 million nonprofits in this country, many of them doing the same thing. I think there's 67,000 that do something with veterans. And so how do you distinguish yourself from all of the others that are trying to do the same thing? If you can show that you have some kind of sustainable cash flow coming in to supplement what donations are, then that puts you quite a ways ahead. So I think that would be my answer.
I guess what I'd add to is my day job is managing the investments of Albemarle Foundation, so I spend a lot of time analyzing financials. But to me, a nonprofit's nothing more than a successful business that doesn't pay taxes. And so their return on investment is the impact they make on their community and the people that they help. And so one of the ways Albemarle has tried to put that to work is Maureen Lawrence, who I've already mentioned, runs our regional partnership program. Essentially, what we're trying to do is push our grant making down to the smallest corners of the state of Colorado. And we do it by breaking the state up into 11 councils, almost like congressional districts. Then we ask people in the community, business, civic, and nonprofit to come forward with good ideas on grant making, not only of traditional grants, but also on things that we should be funding. So what we're trying to do is reach out, impact more nonprofits, but do it with the experts in the local communities. And I'll just speak to my region, which is the Southwest region between Pagosa Springs and Cortez. 4 years ago, several council members talked about that there were a lot of teenage suicides. And these were kids who were not identified by the schools as in trouble. And so they couldn't figure it out. And so what we did is our fellows at Albemarle did a bunch of research, and we found 4 organizations who were serving these populations. But the number one problem they ran into is they didn't have enough counselors on the ground in the schools, just talking to the kids every day and understanding their day-to-day problems. And so over the last 3 years, the regional council, which is empowered to make grants of $200,000 a year, has committed all $600,000 in the last 3 years to putting counselors into these schools. And I think we're There haven't been any suicides in young teens for the last 18 months. I'm not sure we can take credit for that, but the point is these counselors are helping all the kids, not just the ones identified. But that wouldn't have happened if we didn't find the experts in the community.
Right. No, fantastic. Well, thank you for the work that everybody's doing up here. And again, just gives you some good examples of, when kind of done differently and focusing on those things, having good research and data, obviously, but being innovative in terms of the approach of how you fund it. And then using truly, some of these business models and using capitalism's powerful economic engine to create this impact, using good not just for gain as well. You can see some phenomenal results as many things. We could spend hours up here talking about some of the work that Dakota has done and some of the work that Blue Star is doing and some of the other businesses that I've mentioned up here. So we're coming into the home stretch. This time goes by quickly. And so I got two more questions for you. So this first question is for everybody. And just given time, if you could just keep your response to about 2 minutes apiece. Everybody's looking at you, Ted. So, so this is the question. So what are the opportunities that you see that are beginning to emerge in the social impact sector? So there, if you don't mind starting us off.
I don't want to start this.
Oh, man. Oh, they gave the mic to you, Ted.
I'll be very brief. I'm going to use one word, and that's innovation. And then I think, let me use one more word, creativity. Today I learned about this company at the board meeting that is taking plastic water bottles, and they're recycling the plastic water bottles and making ties. I don't know how they do that. It's a company in Denver, and Jonathan shared that story with me today and the company, and we were on their website. And then not only that, but they're employing people that are immigrating to the company that have this skill set of being able to sew. So not only are they dealing with this issue of plastic water bottles and recycling them, but they're also serving a community of people that have a skill set that may be struggling to find a job, and they're leveraging it. They're not taking this and doing it overseas. It's all done in Denver. The recycling, the sewing, the manufacturing, and it's direct to consumer. It's the coolest thing. So to me, that's innovative. To me, that's creative. So those are basically the words I'd use to describe what I see.
Thank you. And the company he's referring to is Knotty Tie with a K-N. They're a really, really cool company in Denver and working with refugees. So thank you.
Since you just started, I'll give you an example. Elpamar, what we're trying to do beyond our traditional grants is find innovative leaders in communities. For years, we've funded a more migrant-focused organization called La Puente Home in Alamosa, Colorado. And so they were looking for alternative income sources. And this is an organization run by a gentleman named Lance Cheslock, who grew up and lived in Colorado Springs, but has run this nonprofit for 20 years, and mostly helps migrant farmers and other individuals in the valley. But he's also evolved into more dealing with homeless issues. And so we took a look at him, and he's now created a coffee shop, Milagros Coffee Shop on Main Street, to try to generate alternative revenues. And so we gave him $100,000. Seems like a round number, but over several years, not to fund the migrant stuff that we would have done 20 years ago, and we did do, but to fund these creative new ways of trying to finance his business without violating any IRS tax code. But also, he's broadened his mission to not just the farmers and the day laborers, but the regular folks in the community who may be homeless for other reasons. And so we're seeking out those kind of nonprofits. They're the experts, but we can help fund new programs. So we're starting to look at traditional nonprofits that are doing non-traditional things differently than we used to. And it's exciting. It's like a new company, for-profit company that changes its business model and comes up with new products. We're seeing that in the nonprofit sector, and I think Elpamar has a responsibility to do their best to help fund some of those programs.
All right. Great example.
I've talked about it a little bit already, the social impact bonds or pay for success models. I see that as the greatest opportunity going forward, and I love it because it takes charitable dollars that can be used to take a risk that something will work. And if it works, then it reduces government expenditures in a given area. So everyone wins. So I think I'm most excited about that. I would also talk about, if I could, two things that worry me about this sector. One is I spent my career in the investment management business, and I've seen too many people in the impact investment area making claims that I don't believe are correct. From a theoretical point of view, whenever you reduce the pool from which you're choosing investments, other things being equal, your risk-related return will go down. And you can't consistently claim long-term higher returns from impact investing. That just, in the long run, is not true. But there are people claiming that. And I think that's dangerous and could give impact investing a bad name. From my point of view, whenever you do impact investing, you should go into it expecting a lower return by somewhat. I mean, that's the price you're paying to accomplish the social objective. The other thing that is troubling to me is I have seen so many social ventures and social entrepreneurs who are headed by people with great hearts and not very good financial skills. So if someone wants to do a social venture, I would urge them to take accounting and finance and then pursue their social venture. Because to succeed, it's going to be hard, and you really need good financial and accounting skills.
And I would just add to that as well in terms of what you just mentioned. I mean, that's one of the things that we're seeing at the Institute as well. Just a lot of people with just really good intentions, very, very passionate, which is excellent. You have to have it. But at the same time, you really got to have those skills to understand, how to raise funding, how to do the marketing. A lot of people get the messaging wrong. It really is incredible. They have these great ideas and this great, passion for it, but they don't know how to tell the story the right way. Or again, as you just mentioned, you really understanding how the finances work, how to keep the business running. So they might be great at coming up and starting this thing, but then once it kind of gets going, or they want to increase it, or they want to scale it up, and they don't have the skill set to do it. So I think you're spot on of really making sure that you're educated. And the last thing I'd add too is just that for a lot of people, they think that this could be a silver bullet. It's not. This is really, really hard to do. So it's hard running a nonprofit. It's hard running a for-profit. Now you're going to combine the two. It's harder. Trust me, it's a lot harder. So just to kind of dispel that myth of this is wonderful and it's great when they work well, but they're harder because sometimes your mission and your margin, this happens all the time. That's actually normal. What you don't want is this, but there's friction. There's that friction that's there.
Can I comment to put a plug for your PRISM Awards coming up next month?
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
That's the perfect program to recognize the actual how hard it is, but also the success stories. Considering every year you add 100 people up to almost 500 people
About
last
500,
year.
yeah.
Obviously, people are interested in what you're doing and want to see those success stories. So people should all come out for the PRISM Awards. March
12th.
March
It's coming up. Thank you. Becky?
And I guess I would kind of piggyback on I have an accounting degree, so my brain's always like the finance. And when I talk to small business owners about getting financing, like a big piece is getting your financials in order because you're making big decisions based on that. And if you don't have good information coming in, then you can't make good decisions coming out. And being able to justify that impact, especially as a nonprofit asking for funding year after year after year, if you don't have quality financial statements and you're competing with someone who does, your chances of success are lower. So really, you are being a good steward of other people's money, and not being able to properly document that is a failure. And generally speaking, keeping track of finances is not most people's favorite thing, which I was telling Jeff that I had my junior achievement class today, and someone had to be the accountant, and that was like the dreaded job. So they got the first $100, which was great. But tracking that is hugely important for measuring impact. So, but I think you guys covered all the other stuff that I would on the social impact. So keep good numbers.
Exactly. Thank you. All right. And so final question and then final remarks from the group. We'll come back to the final remark piece. I have a question that I'll ask at the end. But just what do you guys see, each of you, in terms of next steps for this area of just funding? So you guys gave a lot of really good examples of what's kind of happening now. How do you see this evolving? And Bart kind of gave us, a little bit of, some cautionary things to kind of watch out for too. But next steps as this evolves in this funding realm, anything that you guys see happening that will be beneficial, or the next thing that could come?
I just say I think one of the most important things for the nonprofits is I think raising money is very difficult to do, and it's very staff intensive and very connection intensive. I think coming up with alternative sources of funding, like Puente Homes doing. These kind of things will help them stabilize their revenues. If they can get over 50% of their revenues from consistent sources and raise less than half annually, I think then they can focus much more on their mission rather than focusing on fundraising and sometimes making their mission second. So that's a quick answer to that, but that's, I think, is a very important priority for them.
Yeah,
And it
makes
gets
sense.
to Bart's idea they need to have good business sense too,
Yep.
because if they're a human service organization that's running a coffee shop, you have to be in two businesses. And it can work, but you've got to know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I would say I agree 100% with everything you said. The only thing I would add to that is, as you get sustainable funding sources through the sale of a product or service, with the social impact business, and then you have a need to maybe purchase a building or acquire some equipment or fund an expansion. At that point, after you've had a reasonable track record, it will be a lot easier to get funding from a bank or a traditional financing source. And I think over time, you're going to see banks, evolve and be more open to lending to social impact businesses. However, as even for-profit businesses, it's hard for startups to get funding, right? And it's even more difficult for a social impact startup to get traditional bank funding because of the risk that's involved. And so I think once you prove the sustainability of the business, it'll be much easier to get funding down the road.
Yeah, and I would say as bankers, as we see more social impact opportunities, it will be more normal. So that's not really what's seen that much. There's a lot of SBA financing where you can kind of lend outside the box, but at the end of the day, it's like I think you're a really nice person, Ted, but when you make decisions on credits, you're not so sweet. They're cold, hard. They just make that decision. And I participated on the local Relic deal, and we had to really fine tune their business plan because we're going to the Small Business Administration. It had all these, they do wonderful stuff. But that doesn't make a credit get approved. So it's, you have to present something to a lender that makes you look like a business person. And if you're looking to, and I think that a lot of charitable organizations will be looking more to that business piece too. I think it makes you more competitive when you're looking for that kind of funding. I lost track where I was going with that. So I think as more of it's out there, more of it'll make sense. And, I'm always glad to be available as a resource if you're struggling with trying to, how does a bank think? Because we're normal mortals, just like you. Yeah.
I don't really have anything to add on that question. But can I talk about something else?
Sure. We're kicking off the final remarks section.
The final remarks section, I guess, would be, I just think it's so important what everyone here and on this panel is doing, working in our community to work with individuals to help them improve their lives. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and the one thing that became clear to me, this was a whole lot of nonprofits presenting what they do. The one thing that became very clear to me is those that work and accomplish social change build a sense of community with the people that they're trying to serve. And they do that very effectively. And part of the healing or whatever it is that happens is this sense of community. So bottoms up, person to person in the community, working with individuals is just so important. And that is not related to your question at all, but I was impressed with the fact of the power of community. So.
But I think it's an important comment too, because what you're kind of tapping into as well as the why. And funding and money is absolutely important to any endeavor, but that's kind of it's a tool that you use to kind of reinvest to do more. But the reason why people do it, and you hit on one of those, is it really is about something larger than all of us, and community is a big part of that. But yes, final remarks and any words of wisdom as well. So to social entrepreneurs or people that are thinking about becoming social entrepreneurs as well, anything that you guys have seen just in your experiences that could kind of help maybe guide them and help them make some good decisions and really be prepared. So I think I like Bart's comment of make sure you know how to read financial statements. If you're running a business, you got to have that.
Yeah, and there's resources to teach you that if that's not your comfort yet. I kind of build on what Bart's saying about you're almost in a way saying shop local. So it's the decision made closest to the consumer is the best decision. It's, you know, the government decision made closest to the citizen is the best decision. So, and I think even when you're looking at funding, and I'm going to speak to the for-profit because I'm really not a skillful nonprofit funder yet, but community banks are hugely important because these are the people that live here and they see what's needed and they're invested in the community. And so if you have a good idea that might not make sense in Minneapolis, where some bank loans are underwritten, you're going to have a better shot and you have an advocate that's there for you. So I've always said, like, a good deal is good anywhere. Like, anyone wants to do that loan, and an okay deal can be done at certain places. But it's being able to sell your story, why it makes sense. And in the end, it has to make sense. And I think getting out of the high stakes fundraising business is a good vision for every nonprofit. And I see it in somewhere it's like they have a gala and that is 50% of their income. And it's like, can you imagine being in charge of that? Like, that's tough. So I guess my words of advice is, if you feel passionate about what you're doing, don't give up.
That's great advice. They're very good words. I think, again, just kind of piggybacking on what you said, as it relates to a sustainable, business model, I'll just go back to basics. Having a good plan, having a mission that you're passionate about, if you don't have great financial acumen or business acumen, having someone on your team that does is critical. Leverage the resources that are here in our community. The Small Business Development Center, we've got tons of consultants, many of which I know, and these are great people. If you go to a bank, for example, and you get turned down, don't stop, because every bank, believe it or not, is pretty different when it comes to their credit culture and their knowledge about this space and the not-for-profit space. So don't give up, because one bank may look at something way differently than another bank. Some have specialty areas. One of the things that I do is I refer people when people come to me for money and we don't have a good skill set in that area. I'll send them to another bank, a competing bank that I know that can get that done for them. Because to me, it's about being a trusted advisor, right? And someone that can help solve a problem, for a customer. And so I'll look outside the box to see if I can find a way to solve that solution or come up with a solution for them. So again, be organized, be prepared, have a good solid plan, have a sustainable funding model built in there, component 50% plus, preferably closer to 100%, but that's just the conservative lender in me coming out. Because I know how hard it is to raise money in the nonprofit space. So it's really a blend, right? You're blending kind of that for-profit and nonprofit aspect of it. So those are my thoughts. There.
I'm excited about the nonprofit sector in the Pikes Peak region. When you realize just catty corner from where we are is the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. They're preparing our athletes for the Olympics this summer in Tokyo. The Olympic Museum is going to open late May 2020. The only advice I'd give, and from the business advice, we've got excellent advice here, is that I think a nonprofit needs to know who their audience is, know who their client is, and also focus as much as possible. And the biggest part of that is collaboration. We get a lot of grant requests from similar organizations, and the frustrating thing is we can't tell them to collaborate, but they have similar missions, similar goals. So the more they work together, the better it is, the more likely we will be to fund them too. So thank you.
Fantastic. Great. Can we get a round of applause for this fantastic panel? Just the knowledge and the experience, and truly, I think you heard a lot tonight of just the innovation. They are not doing business as usual in any of their spaces, and I think we'll see more and more of that. Just want to thank everybody for coming and joining us tonight. The Institute is also one of those resources that Ted mentioned, and so for folks that want to take we have a lot of free classes that we offer to the community as well. You can check that out on our website at CIA, the number 4 SI. And for those of you who wonder what the 4 is, that's for the fourth sector and the fourth economy, and also these 4 buckets that are up here as well. Also want to give special thank you. We are in the UCCS downtown space, and so this is a fantastic space, and so they were kind enough to let us have the panel here. But again, thank you everybody for attending tonight. Thank you everybody that is viewing online. Appreciate your time. Hopefully you picked up some good information. And again, just another round of applause for this fantastic panel. You guys are doing great work. Thank you so much.